Asher, just quickly, there's a question on public toilets. Are you taking that one, or is that me?
Today's Cabinet meeting. Want to welcome my fellow Cabinet members. Thanks for the help with the introduction from Councillor Cheney there.
Sorry.
Yeah, thanks for Cabinet, councillors and members of the public for this meeting, whether you're here live or whether you're watching the recording. This is being broadcast live through our YouTube channel. And as usual, the full reports are available on the council's website. A few announcements, notifications in relation to today's agenda. Firstly, item 13, Bristol Holding Company business plans have been deferred for further consideration. Agenda item 11, the HRA. We're going to hold an extraordinary cabinet session for the HRA. We had an administrative error that means we are going to have to defer the paper and hold that extraordinary meeting. Agenda item 10, the dedicated schools grant 2020-2021. The budget proposals are included under APR 15 as a general exception because it was not listed on the Mayor's forward plan 28 days prior to this meeting. I can confirm that the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny Management Board and members of the relevant Scrutiny Commission have been notified about this item. So agenda item 2, public forum. And as usual, a reminder that statements and questions will be taken at the time of the relevant agenda item. Members of the public and councillors who have given notice that they wish to speak will be invited to the meeting at that point. I will give a reply or ask the relevant cabinet member to respond. Public forum statements and questions have been published on our website as a supplement to the agenda papers. Agenda item 3, apologies for absence. No apologies today, we're all here. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. Can I ask any cabinet members if you have any declarations to make in relation to today's agenda? No? Okay, thank you. Agenda item 5, matters referred for consideration by scrutiny or full council. There are none on this occasion. Agenda item 6, reports from scrutiny commissions. Councillor Jeff Gollop is going to give this report.
Thank you, Marvin. Sorry for the delay in getting in there. Yes, Marvin, this is the report that was prepared following yesterday's OSM meeting and prior to the decision to defer the Bristol Holdings Group business plan. And I felt it was appropriate for us to put on record the comments that were made in the public part of that meeting, and that's what I'm now proposing to do. First of all, members expressed some concern over the scheduling of reports to the Cabinet meeting today, noting that a number of significant items in addition to the budget were being taken, which made it difficult to arrange adequate scrutiny. Members wanted to comment that they agreed that the Bristol Holding Company had made a very positive contribution in what has been a difficult year, and we felt it was only right to make that comment in the circumstances. Members were optimistic about the role that Gorham Homes could play in increasing housing numbers within the city, although commented that there was an absence of sufficient reference to affordable housing within the business plan. The financial viability of Gorham Homes and in turn the holding company was raised as a potential issue if success would be largely dependent on the unpredictable housing market. Members were made aware that since the business plan had been published, there had been an increase in one of the risks identified relating to planning and programme delivery. It was noted the company was considering the implications of this and would reflect the change in its risk register going forward and report back as appropriate. Osm also noted the Grant Thornton report, Review of Governance Arrangements for Bristol City Council Subsidiaries, which had highlighted significant issues that the council needed to address around the companies. Members recognised that although this report dealt with issues relating to Bristol Energy, the points raised were also very relevant to the governance of other council-owned companies and other commercial activity. Members stressed the importance of this work being completed as a matter of urgency. They also requested that the comments from Osm board on any further reports are minuted at Cabinet in exempt session if necessary, in line with the Grant Thornton recommendation. Members were positive about the business plan for Bristol Waste Company. In previous years, the board had raised the fact that social value was played down in the business plan, and members felt this should be given more emphasis considering the level of contributions made. The board had some additional points around the Bristol Waste business plan and the Cabinet report delivery of cleaning and security services that will be taken at the Cabinet meeting on the 25th of February. But these would need to be raised in exempt session. There was a disappointment about the lack of time available to scrutinise these proposals. There were further comments made by Osm in exempt session, but I didn't think it was reasonable to ask Cabinet to go into exempt session to receive them. So unless you have plans for an exempt session today, I will circulate those independently to Cabinet members just for the record. Thank you, Marvin.
Thank you, Councillor Gollop. So agenda item 7, Chair's business. There are 4 areas I would just like to share with everyone today. First, just a bit of an update on COVID. I just think we should anchor it into to our Cabinet reports because it clearly is the kind of defining feature of this moment in our time. So our Bristol rate at the is 381 new cases per 100,000 population. Now this is lower than the previous 7 days when it was 452. So you can see those numbers coming down. But as I keep saying, we cannot be prematurely overconfident. It's lower than the England infection rate at 438 again, which suggests we're doing relatively well, but still we're up in the near 400. It wasn't too long ago, well, it feels like that we were talking about our concerns at reaching case rates of around 20 per 100,000. So we really need to stay on the COVID safe behaviors, hand, face, and space, and understand the principles of transmission through person to person, through droplets, aerosols, and contact with shared services. We are continuing to support the National Health Service with the vaccine rollout across Bristol and wider, in line with the National Prioritisation Programme, with specific population groups being targeted at first. Again, we're constantly asking, please do not lobby to have the vaccine. You will be contacted by the NHS when the population group of which you are a member is due to be vaccinated. So please do not give the NHS the additional administrative burden of dealing with these inquiries. The invitations will come at the right time. But from December the 8th to January the 17th, just under 80,000 vaccines were administered across Bristol, North Somerset and South Gloucestershire. And we will be sharing local data on the vaccines rollout when it is available. And finally on COVID, it's just a thank you again to individuals, households, businesses, and our city partners. This is as much about personal behaviours, about what we do to take care of each other, as it is about anything else. And I want to thank people and acknowledge the disruption to everyday life, the disruption to education, the relationships, the pressures on businesses that's going on, and just to recognise all that everyone is coping with at this time. And thank you for supporting the city and your city neighbours. I'd also like to just update you on the One City Plan. Now the One City Plan is our approach to city leadership, getting leadership beyond the walls of this organisation, Bristol City Council, and recognising that what Bristol is not just the City Council, but the collection of all of our decisions, us, the health service, universities, voluntary sector organisation, faith groups, and the One City Plan and the City Office was an attempt to bring us all together to identify what we all want Bristol to be, so we get our ducks in line and make that kind of city possible. We talk about housing, health and well-being, education, children, transport, economy, and environment. And I'd say and what's also important about the approach is because we look forward right up to 2050, and we agree what we want to achieve right up to 2050. This is something that takes our city planning and our prioritization beyond the fluctuations of the electoral cycle, which is what so many people have asked for. How can we break beyond the inconsistencies, the disruptions that come around from elections all the time? So it's not my plan. We made space for the city to come together to write the plan together. And it offers that consistency, as I said, over the long-term view. And we've written a plan, but it is not concrete boots. There is not one version. We said that we would refresh it every year in light of the changing circumstances. We are now about to publish the third iteration of the One City Plan. And this will very much be capturing so many of the challenges that have been thrown up by COVID, by climate emergency, ecological emergency, and the underlying drivers that will push us towards greater socioeconomic inequality in the city and around the world as well. And so that plan very much will be our survival and our recovery plan for Bristol. It's going to be published at the City Gathering on March the 12th. And the thematic boards, all the boards that own each of the core themes within the plan, are just finalizing the refresh of each of their timelines. There is time to reach out to them, not much, but there is time, and to make any comments any of you have on the One City Plan, and obviously the Cabinet are taking co-leadership roles on all of those boards as well. And I want to thank everyone in the city that has contributed to the One City approach over the years. The City Office, the plan, those that will come forward with big offers and big asks, from period poverty that Helen has played such a leadership role on, the work on domestic violence with Helen and Nasha, the feeding Bristol with Alan, all of the with Anna, all of these areas that we've worked together as a city to take on. I want to thank everyone for your efforts on that. The third area I would just like to share today and by extension formally announce is the Disability Equality Commission. And Asha announced this in September 2020 in recognition of the inequalities and additional challenges faced by disabled people in the city. And now a steering group, including councillors, disabled groups and individuals, along with council officers, was established and has taken the work forward, working towards a strategy to embed disability equality in policy and practice across the city, council policy, and in the One City Plan as well. And so we're formally announcing the commission today, and that kicks off the drive to recruit members of the commission and obviously a chair. And this commission will sit alongside the Bristol Women's Commission, the Bristol Commission on Race Equality, and report with similar governance arrangements and with a similar level of leadership responsibility to make sure our city is inclusive and as just and ambitious on equalities as we can and must be. And finally, a note came round today to councillors from Councillor Clive Stevens, just sharing the news of his resignation as a city councillor from the 31st of January. I just want to thank Councillor Stevens for the contributions he's made to the city. And I will say a few times I've pointed out a bit of disappointment at the low levels of engagement of councillors with cabinet meetings. But Clive is one of the councillors that turned up and participated in cabinet meetings, making statements, asking questions, and we have to learn to live with difference. It's the art of democracy and the art of city making, and Clive has certainly helped us exercise that muscle of living with difference. He agrees when he needs to and challenges when he feels he needs to as well. And and that's important for our democracy, and welcome, and thanks for your participation in our cabinet and full council and what you've done for the city, Clive. Okay, so on to agenda item 8 now, which is the budget monitoring outturn report, P8. So can I ask Councillor Craig Cheney to introduce this report? Craig.
Thanks, Marvin. I'd like to take a moment just to reiterate your comments about Councillor Stevens as well. So not only does Clive always turn up to cabinet and raise questions, he's also vice chair of audit, where he's always very thorough. He's also involved in budget scrutiny and so on. So his contribution is massive and shouldn't be underestimated. So thanks, Clive. So this is the the budget monitoring outturn report for period 8. This report provides an update on the council's financial performance for 2020-2021 and includes the estimated impact of the pandemic for the year, proposed mitigations in year, and future uncertainties. Further to the more recent announcement of COVID national restrictions, the financial challenges as a result of the pandemic is now estimated to be £81 million. This forecast relates to additional costs incurred directly in responding to the pandemic and significant loss on income directly related to restricted activities and or the change in economic climate. This position may be subject to change as the position evolves and national guidance changes. Up to the end of November, the council had received from government 4 tranches of emergency funding support, additional specific grants, and grants to compensate a proportion of lost income. These will be used to mitigate the in-year financial pressures, with any amount carried forward to 2021-2022, offsetting future year COVID financial pressures and other uncertainties as a result of national restrictive measures. Local authorities continue to operate in a difficult financial circumstance, and we continue to have pressures on our budget which aren't related to the pandemic directly. In the budget, we set out plans to transform some of our services and reduce the cost of providing services. However, some of these have been directly impacted by COVID-19, and this pressure currently stands at 6.3 million. These overspends and costs are particularly acute in adult social care, facilities management, and home to school transport, all of which have been partially offset by efficiencies elsewhere. We will continue to manage and identify mitigations where practical in year and on an ongoing basis to ensure the council remains financially resilient going forward. In addition, a provision for a supplementary estimate from the General Fund Reserve has been outlined in the council's 2021-2022 budget report. As part of this report, approval has also been sought to reduce public reporting in P10, so that the next publicly reported budget monitor report will be for period 9 December, and followed that by the end of year outturn report. Internal monitoring and forecasting by budget holders will still take place, and any significant movement will be reported to Cabinet on an exceptional basis. These will ensure that resources during these periods are redirected and focused on activities such as year-end accounts closure, budget setting, and COVID response.
Thank you very much, Craig. Now we have on this item, I think we had no public forum statements or questions submitted for this item. Can I ask any cabinet members if they would like to comment? No, okay. Well, I will. I mean, and it just prefixes what number of us will say throughout. Just thanks for all the work you've done on this, Craig. It's a heavy burden to take on, being a political lead on our finances, such a challenging time, and it's really appreciated. So let me hand back to you now to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thanks, Marvin. And obviously I would thank Denise and the finance team for all their hard work in this. It's been an unenviable task. In terms of the recommendations to be made today, I'm pleased to approve this report.
Thank you, Craig. So agenda item 9 now, budget recommendations to full council, including Treasury management strategy. And this is with you again, Craig.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. I'm proud to introduce next year's budget proposals, setting a balanced budget and setting our aims and priorities for the financial year ahead. Despite the huge challenges we face from COVID, we have held firm and are able to set a balanced budget. At a time of uncertainty, we need to continue to be a dependable partner for organisations in the city. Our proposed budget for 2021-22 is developed from the strategy in our medium-term financial plan and capital strategy approved by full council in December. As we work together to recover and rebuild, our responsible financial management of taxpayers' money gives the council the best possible chance to support the city to build back in a more sustainable and inclusive way. But while this budget looks to the future of a recovering, rebuilding Bristol, we must remember where we've come from and our experience so far. English councils have seen their core funding from central government reduced by 15 billion over the decade of austerity. Prior to the COVID-19 crisis, councils were already facing a funding gap of 6.5 billion by 2024-25, even with the assumption of council tax increases of 2% each year, fees and charges rising and sustained levels of business rate growth. Local government, which has been at the front line with so many other services during this pandemic, will face a funding gap of more than 5 billion by 2024 to maintain services at current levels. Amid the huge economic and societal uncertainty caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, this figure could double. COVID-19 has presented unprecedented financial challenges. It is not a single one-year issue, but will continue to affect the council in the foreseeable future. However, in managing our finances, we are treating the impact of COVID-19 as a one-off that we aim to address through a financial response package of council resources and further government support. We continue to fund core services from ongoing revenue and have used one-off government funding to pay for one-off initiatives. This has allowed us to produce a steady state budget for the next 5 years. This also avoids the worst effects of sudden and unplanned decisions on service delivery and the most vulnerable members of the community. This budget reflects our values and how we want Bristol to recover. This is a budget that contains no cuts to services, a budget that freezes rents for council tenants, a budget that applies 3% levy for social care that enables us to continue to fund the core service for our most vulnerable and oldest citizens, a budget that is constantly under pressure from growing costs and growing need, a budget that continues our support for the most vulnerable families in our city through the council tax reduction scheme. But if you can pay, then paying the increased levy will fund our vulnerable residents through a period that has delivered even greater hardship. We continue to invest heavily in the city through our capital programme with just over £900 million allocated to drive forward inclusive economic recovery, £150 million to help address the affordability and need for housing, £75 million to maintain our city infrastructure, our roads and bridges, £26 million for a special educational needs investment plan, £25 million invested in heat network expansion to reduce our carbon output and fuel poverty, £22 million securing flood defences in Avonmouth, £5 million to deliver the long-needed waste and reuse centre in South Bristol, £5 million for development of the Hawkfield Business Park. This administration is proud to propose this budget, delivering in the most difficult circumstances, that will be submitted to full council for approval in February.
Thank you again, Craig. So public forum statements and questions. We have received a statement and 2 questions from Dave Redwell, and Dave, we're going to invite you into the meeting now.
Hello.
Oh, there you go, Dave. You okay? Can we invite you to ask your first question?
My question's about Portway Park and Ride Railway Station. I'm wondering whether or not work's going to start within the financial year.
Okay, so Kai, you're going to come in on this one.
Yeah, thanks, Dave, for your question. Very simply, we expect it to be open by the end of this year. So December 2021 is what the date we've got for the completion on that project. Although, I mean, you probably share my frustrations with rail projects sometimes about how often they can be over budget and over time. But I think we're pretty confident with this one that it will be ready by December 2021.
Thank you. Just my concern about Network Rail Western routes. Yeah.
Did you have a supplementary to that one, Dave?
Well, I suppose my my supplementary there would be to say that I think we desperately need, as part of the point you made yourself, Mayor, governance changes at WECA and some setting up a rail team, because that seems to be an issue I'm picking up. There's not enough staff dedicated to rail at WECA, probably. Something needs to be looked at. So would Kai agree that we need to beef up our team to challenge Network Rail, be the right words, I think, politely?
Well, I think what we need really is sort of a more locally accountable Network Rail. How you deliver that, I'm not too sure, but I think at the moment it's just accountable to the Department for Transport, isn't it, Network Rail? And we don't really have, although they're partners and they do talk to us and work with us, they don't have that local accountability. So I do agree with you, there needs to be more local accountability of Network Rail, but how you deliver that, I'm not too sure.
I think I
mean,
might agree with, so
Dave.
I think I might agree with Marvin in saying we need a devolution deal that works for us.
I was going to say that's
That's
a
one of the answers.
across
Yeah.
many issues about accountability to the places, at least as much as there's an accountability to London. Do you have a second question as well, Dave?
Can you remind me of my second question? Sorry, I haven't got it in front of me.
It was the Metro Bus project, the date of
Oh,
operation
yes.
of the South Bristol
Yes,
Loop with a new
I
stop
suppose
on
that-
Banfield.
Yes, I mean, I'd like to, yes. I mean, obviously, we've got all this infrastructure paid for, and I really probably want to know when, not yourself, Marvin, but the Metro Mayor is going to start to try and commission services. I mean, just discussion with Karen Smith, the local MP, and it's frustrating. The Banfield site should have had some WECA grant, and I would just ask the question, do we have any dates where WECA may commission a bus service on that route?
Yeah, I've got an answer. In terms of the bus stop, Dave, the Banfield one that you're talking about. So WECA approval of the funding there is expected towards the end of this year, with the implementation at the start of 2022. As you know, I mean, it is a service that's gone under the WECA umbrella now, but obviously we're part of WECA, so we can make those calls that you've outlined here. And in terms of, in general, the increase of Metro bus services to South Bristol, obviously the reason they don't exist at the moment is because of the commercial prospects of those services and it being linked to the housing growth. But also on top of that, now we've obviously had COVID-19, where there's probably not one bus service that is commercial anywhere in the country. So what impact that has on services going forward is unknown, and you know yourself that bus companies, through the grant that they're getting from government at the moment, are sort of operating an 8-week notice period, aren't they, of any changes from government to that. So to plan a medium to long term bus network in the current environment is very difficult. But obviously our aspiration is to get that bus stop in, and is to increase the services out through to South Bristol on the South Bristol link. That was part of the promise of Metro Bus to begin with.
Do you have a supplementary, Dave?
I think my only supplementary is, as buses, as you say, are controlled now by the Department for Transport for £27.5 million a week of taxpayers' money, maybe we should have a conversation with the DFT about the future, and about the future of making sure our Metro Bus network is fully funded, and that may need Karen Smith perhaps to go back to the department.
Yeah, no, I think sort of leaving us hanging like that on an 8-week notice is, I guess it's okay to deal with the emergency situation, but there is that question of what's going to happen next. What is the long-term future of the bus industry and the bus networks? I mean, we definitely in Bristol would have liked to have seen all that money that's gone into the bus industry in Bristol, some of that to be secured through equity through the bus company, so we get some sort of ownership in the system at least. But all the government have done is just commission and pay for the services. So that long-term thinking about how we could benefit, a silver lining from this, hasn't really been taking place in terms of what government are doing. But it's something that we would like to see.
Okay, thanks, Dave. And many other opportunities for you to engage, as you know, the line is always open to you. Okay, we've also received 2 questions from Gordon Richardson on behalf of the Bristol Disability Equality Forum. And Gordon's going to receive a written response to those questions. Can I offer comments from any other cabinet members on budget item? No? Okay. Well, I kind of said it the first time. the scale of the challenge that's taken on 10 years of austerity, COVID upon us, ongoing pressures on our budgets. Craig, yourself and the finance team done an incredible job. So let me hand back to you now to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. And again, I want to thank the finance team for all they've done, but also all those other teams that have been sort of relocated into the finance team throughout the year because of the various grant payments and so on that we've had to get out the door as part of COVID response. In making this decision, I've taken into consideration the consultation details and the qualities impact relevance check in the report. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thanks very much, Craig. So let's move on to agenda item 10 now, dedicated schools grant 2020-21 budget proposals. Anna, you're going to bring this one to us.
Thank you, Marvin. Give Craig a break for a cup of tea for 5 minutes, Craig. So this isn't, there's a lot of detail in the report for this, so there's not a huge amount that I'm going to talk through from that level of detail because there's lots of information that everyone can have a look at. But the real role for me today is to provide some feedback from Schools Forum. So the body that consists of, as I always emphasise, volunteer, head teachers, governors, finance directors from various schools and trusts that meet throughout the year to scrutinise budget decisions around schools, and in particular to make recommendations about the use of the dedicated schools grant, which this paper is about. So I just want to begin by offering my thanks to that group and to Carew, who was the outgoing chair this year, who's been involved with Bristol City Council for a long time, and it was a superb chair of that group. So really grateful for the time he's dedicated over the years. And it's no small offer really from that group this year that at a time when their own schools, academies and trusts have faced immense pressure, both in terms of time management and stress levels in schools, but also in terms of financial pressures, that these are a group of people that have given up that time month after month really to look at this. And it's not necessarily a well-known group, but does a really important job for us at the council. So the feedback, the recommendations in the report were agreed by Schools Forum, and so this comes with their recommendation, but with some important things flagged for Cabinet to consider in making this decision. Firstly, then there is an attachment that I think is being published today that goes into some detail, but just to add a bit more explanation of that. Firstly, you'll notice in it that the high needs budget continues to have considerable pressure, and we are grateful again that there has been money moved from the schools block to support that. There will be a continuing DSG management plan that will be presented regularly to Schools Forum and to Cabinet to look at ways of ensuring that money is being spent as effectively as possible, and that will also be co-produced with families of parents and carers of SEND children in their schools and settings. The other thing that was flagged significantly from a number of people at the Schools Forum was in relation to early years funding. This is an ongoing issue sort of throughout the council, particularly of our maintained nurseries in Bristol, and there was a very clear expression of concern about the budgets of nurseries and early year settings in general going forward. I want to really take this opportunity to thank our early years colleagues who have gone a little bit over, sort of under the radar, I feel, in the past few months. Nursery settings have remained fully open, not just to vulnerable and key worker children, and yet have been in an incredibly difficult situation financially because some parents and carers, rightly so, have followed the information to keep children at home if they possibly can, which means that the headcount in nurseries is down, having a financial impact on their funding going forward. And yet their actually day-to-day working has been very high risk. It obviously involves much more intimate care than it does at a primary or secondary setting. And I'm not sure that that's been acknowledged fully in the media, that group of workers who have just been in. And certainly if our nursery suddenly shut, we would see a huge impact on our workforce in Bristol and across the country. So a huge recognition there to nursery staff, both in the private sector and our maintained nurseries, for what they have done. Frankly, immense bravery in the face of some of the rates of cases that we saw, particularly at the start of the month. So I'm really grateful to all of you, and I'm sure that there's a number of businesses that would have collapsed without that childcare wrapping around them. The other area that was raised that we will take away to look at was that, as you're aware, we've got a rising school numbers in our secondary cohort, and have had the decision to open our plan new school called in by the Secretary of State, which means that we're not in a position to open that new school and that we will be increasing numbers at other local schools. There was a concern if there is an increase in appeals, how that would impact on individual school budgets, and we will take that away and look at how we can mitigate that and if that is going to be an issue for any individual schools in particular. And just finally, we've been asked to continue to make representations through our MPs and through yourself, Marvin, and your sort of core cities representation around the ongoing financial pressures generally on schools, on the need for, spoke about this actually on Eugema this morning, on the need for children going back to school at the end of this, being supported perhaps in smaller groups in order to cover some of the ground that they've missed if they've not been in school during this time, and the importance of schools being appropriately funded and settings being appropriately funded going forward in the future. So again, just to reiterate my support for this part of the budget proposals, and my thanks again to Schools Forum for their support in that and for raising all those really important issues.
Thanks very much, Anna. Now, we've had no public forum statements or questions on this item from the public or any councillors. Can I just offer the floor to any of the Cabinet members to comment on this item?
Yeah, I just want to just reiterate Anna's thanks to Schools Forum for all the hard work they do, and particularly over the past year, which has been a really tough time for head teachers and others involved in education. So just a massive thanks to them, and again, thanks to Anna and then to the finance team for what they do on this.
Yeah, I'd add my thanks to that, and on a personal level with Anna, just how how positive it's been to have an actual, a practicing teacher as our cabinet lead as well. Just really understands what's going on in the classroom on the front line as well. So your leadership on this is really appreciated, and thanks to the Schools Forum as well for their the contribution they make to our city priorities and planning and the challenges we have to take on. So let me hand back to you now, Anna, to take the decision, which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thank you. So in making this decision, I've taken into consideration the consultation responses and the equality to impact assessment in the report. And in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations set out in the report.
Thank you, Anna. So agenda item 11, as I said at the beginning, has been deferred. We will hold a special cabinet meeting for that item. So let's move on to agenda item 12, parking services tariff review, and Kai, you're bringing this one forward.
Yeah, thank you, Marvin. Yeah, I just want to be clear that the proposed changes to the parking tariffs will affect the central parking zone, which is predominantly the city centre, and Bristol City Council owned off-street car parks only. So there's no residence parking zones included, and they're not part of this review. So parking tariffs were last increased based on a review in 2016 in 2017, and the proposed changes are broadly in line with the rate of inflation over that period, so the retail price index. So since the last time they were changed, the RPI rates it's increased by 10.7%, and the overall net impact of the changes will see an estimated 9.5% increase to the overall parking revenue. So it's slightly below the RPI rate since they were last increased. There's a few car parks where changes weren't applied in 2017. This was due to construction work, so Wapping Wharf and Lower Guinea Street. So these have been included this time to bring them up to date with RPI applied on the basis of on the basis of the last time they were increased a number of years before 2017. So that's why in some of those cases the increase may look quite steep, but it's in line with inflation. There's also been a standardisation taken, and some historical sort of anomalies been removed around long stay and short stay car parks. So the first hourly rate has been harmonised to £1.50 per hour, across this review. So there may have been some cases where previously the car park may have charged £1 per hour, and it's gone up to £1.50. So it does look steep, but it's just a standardisation of parking policy across the area. And obviously, I just want to make clear that all the money raised through parking firstly goes to cover the parking service, and then it goes to support the work of the transport team, things like developing parking rides, maintaining the highways, for example, and it's not used for any other purpose. The charges we levy in Bristol, Bristol City Council levy are cheaper than the private operators nearby, like the NCP car parks. And in terms of our core city partners, we're about mid-table when it comes to rates for parking. So for the first hour, we're cheaper than Manchester, Cardiff and Leeds. And then for the 4 hourly rate, the sort of rate that's seen as sort of a half day, we're in line with Birmingham, but cheaper than Leeds, Nottingham and Manchester. So I think, I understand there's been some criticism of this policy, but I think if you look at the context, it's in line with the RPI rate of inflation, and also there's cities that charge a lot more than us, but on the other hand, there's cities that charge a bit less than us. So I think this increase is fair, and obviously allows us to develop our and support our transport policies and strategies going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Never easy dealing with parking issues in a growing city. We do need to just recognise the challenges there are for our transport system and managing that with a growing population as well. Can I ask any of the cabinet members if they're brave enough to comment on parking charges? No, okay. I thought Steve might have come in, but there you go. Yeah, and then there was some sensation about this earlier in the week, but as you said, there's a context to this. There's a long overdue review of a number of the charges, and it fits within a wider approach to managing movement in the city and supporting our city centre retail and actually the work that we'll be rolling out with Afzal and Nicola on our high streets and local and town centres across the city, as well. So thanks for all the work, Kai. Let me hand back to you now to take the decision, which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thank you. In making this decision, I've taken into consideration the equalities impact assessment in the report. And in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thanks, Kai. So agenda item 13, as I said at the beginning, has been deferred. So let's move on to agenda item 14, re-procurement of supply and delivery of materials for fleet services. And this is back to you, Craig.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. I'll be quick on this one. This report seeks approval for the retender of the supply and delivery of vehicle and plant spares, consumables and oils for vehicles and plant maintained by Bristol City Council's Fleet Services, and the management of an on-site store at Sandy Park Road in Brislington. Fleet Services are partway through a fleet vehicle replacement programme introducing more electrical vehicles and hybrids into the fleet. It's important that the new contractor embraces all forms of new technology and works with us to achieve our clean air and carbon neutral targets. Otherwise, I just recommend the report's cabinet, which I'm sure you all read.
Thank you. No public forum statements or questions on this item. Any cabinet members have a comment? No? Okay, thank you. I mean, Craig, I know you're whipping through, but just to say, it just talks to the breadth of things we have to do. We've talked about COVID, and now we're talking about supply of our, our parts. But actually, even though it's not necessarily a glamorous area, just how important it is to building a sustainable council, just the way the council works, reducing its impact on climate and air quality and the rest. So thank you. Let me hand back to you now to take the decision, which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thanks, Marvin. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you, Craig. Agenda item 15, quarterly performance progress report, quarter 2, 2020-21. This is with you again, Craig.
So this is a paper for noting, and it's just a brief cabinet on the progress made by all directorates against their key performance indicators for quarter 2, 2020, 2021. Headlines are that 43% of all business plan measures are performing on or above target. That's 20 out of 46. And 46% of all business plan measures have improved. That's 19 out of 41. All of that in the context of COVID is something that actually we should be proud of, although these aren't numbers that usually you'll be shouting about. Beyond that, I'm sure Cabinet have read it, so I'm happy to just recommend it.
Thank you, Craig. Any no public forum statements or questions on this item? Any Cabinet members wish to comment? Well, I just say, yeah, to congratulate all those teams that are continuing to press ahead in incredible challenges and to keep on track with their business plans. Many of them will fall into your briefs, and these are the people who just plow on. As I said, so much of what goes on in the council is not necessarily high profile, and often actually it only becomes high profile when it goes wrong. Most of the time things are actually going well. So thank you to all those teams. Thank you to Cabinet leads for leading your teams, and thanks to Craig for monitoring. So let me, Cabinet notes the recommendations as set out in a report, and which will now be displayed on the screen. That was quick. Quick display. Okay, agenda item 16, corporate risk management report Q3. Craig, with you again.
Yeah, thanks. Last one from me. The corporate risk report sets out the council's current significant risk and summarises the progress in managing the risks as at the 12th of January. To summarise, the lack of long-term commercial investments and major projects risk was reviewed, closed and replaced by 3 new ones. So CRR 40, which is unplanned investment in subsidiary companies, CRR 41, which is long-term major capital projects, and then the financial investments risk, which is a medium risk and is monitored by Resources Directorate. The 3 critical risks in the report with a risk rating of 28 are CRR 9, safeguarding vulnerable children, which is managed by the People's Service Risk Register. This relates to the impact of COVID on resources and increased demand on the service. CRR 32, which is failure to deliver enough affordable homes to meet the city's needs. And then finally, the risk on long-term major capital projects, which are both managed on the Growth and Regen Service Risk Registers. Beyond that, the report is available for reading. I'm sure Cabinet have been through their areas, so I just recommend it.
Thanks very much, Craig. No public forum statements or questions on this item. Cabinet members, any comments? Okay, Craig, thank you for that. So Cabinet notes the recommendations as set out in the report, and which will now be displayed on the screen. That's the end of today's Cabinet meeting. I mean, maybe I shouldn't, but I will just say off the back of what we said about Clive earlier on, you know, some very vocal members of the council talk a lot about transparency, but you know, you have to take advantage of the huge opportunities there are there to engage with Cabinet outside and Cabinet meetings. This was a budget Cabinet meeting, and some of the councillors weren't just an absolute lack of questions and statements and comments. So you know, the system is there to offer those opportunities for people to engage, but people need to engage, particularly if they are elected to do so. But the date of the next Cabinet meeting is Thursday, the 25th of February, 2021 at 4 p.m. So I'll see you then. Take care.